So good morning, everyone. We will start with just a moment more of meditation, and then we'll start by doing the visualization, the practice. I'm not going to lead the visualization this morning. People have now been doing it for a few weeks. You can do that part yourself. And then we'll do the recitations together. I will set the motivation first. I was sitting here debating, but we will do that first. And then we'll get into the Namo Guru Bhyah today, after we do a few things to clean up from last week. Okay, so just take a moment here. And go ahead and visualize the entire refuge field and the space in front, however you are visualizing that. Either the Buddha, simply the embodiment of all three jewels, or expanding your mind to be able to at least take in, if not clearly visualize, all of the holy beings, Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, two kinds of arhats, Dakas, Dakinis, and so forth, all the spiritual mentors, Dharma texts, and ourselves surrounded by living beings as far as you can imagine. And for the folks online, we will be reciting a little bit longer request prayer. It's in the blue prayer book if you have it. It's on page, starts on page 25. Otherwise, just listen. I was reviewing some notes from Geshe Topke's teaching on Pramanavartika this morning, and he's so very, very clear about subtle impermanence and the fact that there is not one single conditioned phenomenon throughout all of infinite space that is not changing. Changing momentarily. The sun, every star we can see, stars we can't see, our own planet, nations, national boundaries, entire cultures and peoples, our own town, our own families, our own aggregates. Every functioning part of our body changing moment by moment by moment by moment. The mind changing moment by moment by moment by moment. It does not take a whole lot of reflection to see how this must be true. We watched that old homestead building down the hill in front of the Abbey has been a great marker and teacher for us of subtle impermanence. that over the years that building has crumbled and fallen and decayed and finally fell over, sinking into the earth through no other force but the fact that it is changing and subject to the conditions around it. And yet, we and every other ordinary being just suffer so much, by our inability to see and grasp and accept this truth. Forces of karma at work, forces of all kinds of natural laws at work. So many forces outside of our control. All a part of the conditioning that supports this constant change, constant flux. And think just for a moment of any one person or any group of people who have suffered unbelievably just right now by not having a deep awareness of this truth. And we cling to things to be permanent because we don't understand the nature of reality itself. And so our great fortune in meeting the Buddha's teachings and through our teachers being introduced to this idea, through having the time to practice, being able to meditate and get at least a sense of it, if not a realization comes way later. The possibility of realizing the ultimate nature, which Geshe Topke says is actually when we have the direct realization of subtle impermanence as well. The possibility that we can achieve that state and just that one little bit of suffering is removed forever. That one little bit of suffering that comes, or the kind of suffering that comes from clinging to things to be permanent when they are not. And if we open our hearts to the grief that arises from all of us ordinary beings who don't know this, don't accept it, how could we leave them behind? It's something that we've come to understand, come to realize. Why in the world would we not wish that to be able to be realized by every being? So let's make that our motivation today. To not only relieve our own suffering from deepening our understanding of the nature of reality, but to cultivate a compassion so great that we're compelled to do that so that we can, without error, without flaw, have all the powers necessary to be able to teach and guide living beings out of that suffering as well. Every single one. So that grief, sorrow, and lamentation no longer exist in the minds of living beings who have all been liberated. So with that in mind, we turn to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as our refuge. Take a moment to connect with your conviction and at whatever level you have, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha to guide us out of the suffering. Namo Guru Vya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Nama Sangaya, Namo Guru Vya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Nama Sangaya, Namo Guru Vya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Nama Sangaya. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity. The other far-reaching practices, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. Reverently, I prostrate my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. I confess all my destructive actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until cyclic existence ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for sentient beings. I dedicate all the virtues of myself and others to the Great Awakening. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, foreland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. The objects of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, friends, enemies, and strangers, my body, wealth, and enjoyment, I offer these without any sense of loss. Please accept them with pleasure. Inspire me and others to be free from the three poisonous attitudes. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Glorious and precious root Guru, Sit upon the lotus and moon seat on my crown, guiding me with your great kindness. Bestow upon me the attainments of your body, speech, and mind. Buddha, unequaled teacher and guide, venerable protector Maitreya, his successor, superior Asanga, prophesied by Buddha. To you, three Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, I make request. Buddha, head of the Shakya clan, the foremost guide, peerless in expounding emptiness. Manjushri, embodiment of the Buddha's complete wisdom. Exalted Nargajana, best of the superiors who sees the profound meaning. To you, three crowning jewels of clear exposition, I make request. Atisha, upholder of this great vehicle, who sees the profundity of dependent arising. Drawn Rinpoche, elucidator of this good path. To these two ornaments of the world I make request. Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of objectless compassion. Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom. Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the snowy land sages. Losang Drugpa, I make request at your feet. Holder of the white lotus, embodiment of all the conqueror's compassion. Guide migrating beings in the land of snow mountains and beyond. Sole deity and refuge, Tenzin Gyatso, at your feet I make request. The eyes through whom the vast scriptures are seen, supreme doors for the fortunate who would cross over to spiritual freedom, illuminators whose wise means vibrate with compassion. To the entire line of spiritual mentors, I make request. So visualize the particular object of refuge that you're working on right now. And we'll do some mantra for a while. I might start with a round of Namo Guruvya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. White light pouring in to purify, and then golden light bringing the realizations of the path. Namo Guruvya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharma, Namo Sangha, Namo Guruvya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharma, Namo Sangha, Namo Guruvya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharma, Namo Sangha. Is everybody's retreat going, basically? Good? Q&As have been nice, but we haven't seen too many people. Everybody's good. Okay. I found this wonderful quote from Yogyo Khyentse Rinpoche about the Nyingdo practices in general that I thought would just be nice to think about. He said, when we take our first steps on the path, we are not capable of helping others. Let's just admit it. To accomplish the good of others, we must first perfect ourselves by purifying and transforming our minds. This is the aim of what we call the preliminary practices, which establish the foundations of all spiritual progress. You may feel like dispensing with these foundations in order to practice teachings that you think are more profound. But if you do so, you are building a palace on the surface of a frozen lake. That is some image, isn't it? If we're not doing the purification practices and creating the merit that we need to really establish a strong foundation, we are building a palace on the surface of a frozen lake. And when the temperature changes, honey, that palace goes dunk to the bottom, right? So it's inspiring. We keep asking, why do I have to do these? Why do I have to do 100,000 prostrations? Why do I have to do 100,000 water bowls? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It comes to the mind, right? Why am I sitting here doing, this is my 50,000th prostration. Am I pure enough? Well, I don't know, deeper question. This is really good. You may feel like dispensing with these foundations in order to practice teachings that you think are more profound, but if you do so, you are building a palace on the surface of a frozen lake. So we'd be inspired to build our foundation really, really well. There was a question from, I don't know if it was from last week, it's been floating around and it came up in the Q&A about Namo Sangaya or Nama Sangaya. And finally, we have a definitive answer, and it's not for the reasons we thought. I turned to Professor Vic Kinnick, who's in the class that we've been taking with Jeffrey Hopkins. She's a professor at the University of Maryland, I think, in religion, and did more research than I thought we were asking for. But it is indeed Nama Sangaya, spelled N-A-M-A-H. And it is because it is followed by an S. It's a Sanskrit pronunciation guide, so that because the nam, actually, the actual word is more closer to nama. The namo is because they're followed by B, D, and G. Yeah, right? So it is Nama Sangaya on the basis of Sanskrit pronunciation. So of course, I mean, every place I looked, it's written as Namo, everywhere I looked. But we have been corrected a couple of times by people who know Sanskrit, who came through and said, oh, you should be saying Nama. And we've been not so clear. So now we know. It will take many years to change the text, I guess. But anyway, Nama Sangaya is correct because it's Nama is followed by an S. So we've talked about how to a little bit about what are the three jewels, what is Buddha, what is Dharma, what is Sangha, a very little bit, especially Buddha. There's so much more to be said about the qualities of the Buddha, which we may or may not get to in the course of this, but definitely should be part of our study during the course of this retreat. Because as we established last week, and we keep hearing over and over again, when we have confidence in a deeper and broader understanding of what the Buddha is, then our faith in the Buddha is the capacity to guide us becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. Then, when we have that conviction that the Buddha did what he said he did, that he was able to see what he said he saw, that he has the capacity to teach what he said he can teach, the more we have confidence and faith in that, then the more we have confidence and faith in what has been taught in the Dharma itself, and the more confidence that we have in the beings who are have realized it on the path, who are on the way, and that's the Sangha, the realized Sangha, the Arya Sangha. What we didn't talk about last week, so we talked about the Sangha and what that was, and I want to clear that up a little bit too in a minute. But what we didn't talk about last week were things to purify in relation to the Sangha. And that is because, especially living here, is a really important thing to be aware of when we're doing the purification part. Because it's so easy to create negative karma in relation to the Sangha if you're living in the Sangha, right? For one thing, we used to talk about this at Dharma Friendship Foundation a lot. We don't talk about this so much here, maybe because we know better, but we used to talk about the fact a lot that you never really know who's a bodhisattva. You never really know who has realizations. And I would imagine that after a while you hang out in the Sangha and you assume nobody does. And true, right? I mean, and that's a dangerous assumption. That is a dangerous assumption. And in fact, if we actually regard one another, members of the ordained Sangha, as though we could well be bodhisattvas and arhats, our behavior towards one another will be more in line with our values. Let's put it that way. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that even if not, even if there are people who don't have realizations, and we never know, representatives, a community of 4 or more fully ordained Sangha represents the conventional Sangha jewel, actually. So it's a potent, I mean, the Sangha itself is a potent field for merit, conventionally, the conventional Sangha is. And it is also a potent field with which to make negativities. And so both kind of hanging out with the Sangha and being in the Sangha, we have lots of chance to be that. So it's something to be aware of. So the first point that we have on this list, and there are many, but being good friends with people who criticize the Sangha in general. That's a negativity that can be on our list of things to purify. Why? Well, because it changes our own mind. It's so easy to have our minds turned when people start talking critically about other people. Very easy to turn our mind and join in the party. And there goes our respect for an object of refuge. Right? Causing disharmony, either in the community or disharmony between 2 people in the community or between 2 Aryas. So, of course, when we're doing our purifications of the 10 non-virtuous actions, that second one of speech, of speaking disharmoniously or divisive speech, is present. But it's also very important to purify that within a community, within the Sangha community. Criticizing, judging, or disrespecting Sangha in general, or one member of the Sangha in general. Criticizing, judging, disrespecting Sangha. To be purified. Yeah. Now, why would that be? Do you think? Yeah.
If you can't respect people who have devoted their lives to practicing the Dharma, who can you respect?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. I mean, that whole critical mindset, especially if we're talking about it. Boy, then we really get into it. But even in our mind gets poisoned with regard to people who are trying their best to practice virtue, or in some cases, people who really do have extreme virtue. And it's our own projection. It's our own judgmental mind. It's our own idea of how people should be that is, casting this criticism on other people. And we'll see it again, because we're going to talk about the Guru today. We carry it for one another in the sangha. So easy to just carry that habit right on to our teachers, right on to everybody else on the planet. But our teachers and, the conventional sangha too, are objects of merit making or negativity making that are more potent than maybe having judgments about the turkeys. Of course, we don't know who an Arya is, so who knows? Using things of the sangha without permission. So we'll be actually covering all of this in January too, when we get to the Vinaya course, looking at what is sangha's property, how do we engage with sangha's property, how, what the downfalls are, and so forth in that way. But using things of the sangha without asking permission is a very important one to keep in mind. Especially, I think if you're a guest here at the Abbey and you've been here a while, and it's kind of easy to think, oh, I know where the clocks are, and my clock is out. I'll just go get myself a clock and not bother anybody. But in fact, that is sangha property. So the best thing to do for almost anything is to just check. Say, is it okay? Or can you get me a clock? Or can I borrow a clock? And in that way, you're kind of super clean. So that issue of using sangha's property, and it's the same thing for using sangha's property for personal use for sangha members, to be watchful. Of course, things are available. That's why people offer them to the sangha. But then after a while, they get appropriated, and then they come mine. Then we've crossed the line. Giving away things that belong to the sangha to a personal friend. Even giving sanghas food and medicine, for example. Now, if we ask permission, we get permission, that's cool. But it is making sure that we do, because the offering to the sangha is made to the entire sangha. It's actually not just the 24 people who live here. It is made to the sangha, the 10 directions. So the person who's making that offering gets enormous merit. But it doesn't personally belong to any of us. And so it's easy to forget that. Not using donations to the sangha for the intended purpose. The inviting generosity team is really trying to be super watchful about this, but when people designate their gift, that's how it's used. If for any reason it can't be used in the way that they're designating it, we go back and ask them, is it okay, or can we use it in a different way? Because they had a particular reason for making this offering, and that is our responsibility to honor that. So the food, kitchen manager, Venerable wrote this very clearly, must distribute gift to the whole sangha equally, not just to some. So things have to be put out for everyone to enjoy, not just the people who work in the kitchen or whatever. Not to be taken personally, but that's the idea, that it belongs to everybody. The offerings belong to everybody. Stealing from the sangha, of course. Slandering the sangha in general, the sangha community in general, and I think particular sangha members as well. It's certainly one of the Bhikshuni precepts, not to slander the sangha. If someone wants to make an offering and we say, oh, we don't need you to give that much, what we're denying is that person has a generous heart. That person wishes to make an offering to the sangha, and by saying, oh, we don't need that much, or you don't need to give so much, or, by our own embarrassment sometimes. Oh, no, that's so much, too much. Then we're denying them the opportunity to let their generous heart give as they wish. So if in the mind of benefactor has already decided to give, okay. So, if someone wants to negotiate and say, how much do you need? That's a whole different thing. But if someone says, I want to give this, or I want to give this quality item, and we're like, oh, no, we're sangha, you shouldn't give that. So, I mean, it's practical. If someone says, as Venerable Children always uses the example of somebody who wanted to give her a television, and, she doesn't watch television, never did watch television, doesn't want it, or, not never, but didn't. And so it just wasn't practical. So to say, really, no, thank you, that's not a gift that's going to work. That part is okay. When we first came to the Abbey, maybe this building too, people wanted to bring their old furniture. We got lots of old stuff. And there was a point where we had to just say, please bring what is in working order and in good shape. We had to clarify that a little bit because we couldn't use it. We ended up taking a lot of stuff to Goodwill that was offered that just wasn't useful. But in general, if someone wants to offer, then we let them offer. If someone wants to give to the sangha and you direct the offering to yourself or somebody or an individual member also. Oh, I'd like to give $4,000. Oh, the Abbey doesn't really need the money, but you know who does? That nun who's flying to Taiwan. That is misdirecting that offering. Right? So, and you might think, oh, I'm being generous with that person. Right? No. Spitting around the temple, littering, and making it dirty. Yes. What, if someone wants to give the offering to the sangha and you to redirect it to a person individually? Yeah. Yes, if the benefactor wants to give to the sangha, and one of the sangha members says, oh, really better if you give it just to this one person, like that. So it's like redirecting a gift again. The merit, what is the merit of giving to the sangha the 10 directions versus giving to this just one person? But also then one person is benefiting. Right, it's just not an appropriate or it's not an appropriate use of that donor's really kind aspiration to give, their act of generosity. Yeah, that's okay, but they've made it. That's from their side. If the benefactor wants to give specifically to one person, that is okay. Generally here, policy-wise, we do kind of encourage people to give to the whole sangha. Unlike, sometimes in the monasteries in India, they have sponsorship programs for individual monastics, which helps to fund them. That makes sense. But the idea of supporting the entire sangha is really what we're trying to promote. And then people get their special sangha member. This one is mine. I give them special gifts. Like the Tibetan Nuns Project will not let you give special gifts or cash to the nuns you sponsor. I mean, they are very clear. You can sponsor a specific nun, but you are supporting the whole spectrum of their nunneries that are supported. That's really the way to care for the donor's gift and also care for the whole sangha. Yeah, like that. Yeah. So, I mean, we could think about this list. I think is not, what's the word? Totally conclusive. There's another word for that. Yeah, not that either. Exhaustive. This is not an exhaustive list. There's many, 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 many ways that we can create negativities with regard to the sangha. But to really think about these as we are doing the purification part will help. And it really helps clear our, because that is so much clutter in the mind. If we're creating negativities just on a daily basis out of our kind of not being so mindful that we're living in the sangha, that we're among the sangha. How terrible to start clouding up our mind with a bunch of negativities that don't need to be there. Right? So we can purify them and help sharpen our awareness of how to,
Well, just strike me on the littering part. Sometimes I do have this behavior on like when I drop a little or something, it's okay. I'm not near the altar, somebody's going to clean it up. That is actually part of the purification I need to do, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. Sort of, leaving the stuff around, somebody else will take care of it. Any more points about that? It's just something I needed to finish up from last week. Yeah, Jason.
So the entire monastery is seen as the sangha, or a representation of the sangha?
The entire monastery, meaning in terms of like the environment?
Yeah.
No, I don't think the environment per se is the sangha refuge, but keeping the environment in which the sangha is residing. I mean, just like this is a leap, but just not that we try to keep the altar clean. We also try to keep the environment in which the sangha is living clean. And it's our responsibility too, as sangha members, to make sure our beds are made, the rooms are clean. We ask our guests to do the same, to keep the place tidy, also for the sake of our own mind. Right. Okay, so we go on to Namo Guru Bhya, which could have been taught at the very beginning, but as Venerable Children has advised, that it might be good, especially if we haven't done this Nundo before, to do this one last. I don't know where people are with this. But before we do, I want to review the ultimate and conventional 3 jewels, because don't think I have been totally clear about this, and it makes a big difference when we come to talking about the guru, okay? And also, so in volume 4, page 16, His Holiness says, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are called jewels because they are rare and precious. Rare because they appear in the world infrequently. Precious because they have the ability to lead us out of samsara to liberation and full awakening. So that is why we're taking refuge in these 3 jewels. They are precious. They are rare. They lead us out of samsara. That is what they do. And then he goes on, all sentient beings' virtuous attitudes, words, and deeds can be traced to the 3 jewels that continually instruct and encourage sentient beings in virtue. All sentient beings' virtuous attitudes, words, and deeds can be traced to the 3 jewels. That's a sweeping claim, isn't it? Shantideva says it too. I've thought about this for a long time because Shantideva says it too. All virtue, they say, can be traced to the 3 jewels. I think that's worth meditating on and really investigating. Because it's not just saying all Buddhist virtuous attitudes. It is saying all sentient beings' virtuous attitudes can be traced to the 3 jewels that continually instruct and encourage sentient beings in virtue. Now, I think we have to think very big for that to make sense. But to take it personally is easy. All this being's virtuous attitudes, words, and deeds can be traced to the 3 jewels. I can go there. And how do I know about the 3 jewels? On the basis of the teachers. It's the only thing we know. So I'm going to talk about this, to review this 3 jewels on the basis of the Mahayana Sutrayana view. It is a little bit different in the Pali, what is defined as a jewel of each of the 3 jewels. And also, it's a little bit different from the tantric perspective, and that's what got mixed in a little bit last week. So now that it's been straightened out, thanks, Venerable Sepul, for pointing it out to me. So when we talk about the jewel of the Buddha, the ultimate Buddha jewel is the Dharmakaya mind, or the omniscient mind of the Buddha, and we can divide it again to also the emptiness of that mind. That's the ultimate Buddha jewel. The emptiness of the mind, the trusations that exist in that mind stream. So the Dharmakaya, ultimate Buddha jewel. Conventional Buddha jewel is the Rupakaya, the form bodies of the Buddha, the ways the Buddhas appear in order for us to be able to relate to them. So that's both the Sambhogakaya, which another translation for that, we've been calling it the enjoyment body, but Venerable Thubten also uses the resource body. Resource because it is a resource for the Arya Bodhisattvas that are receiving the teachings in that Buddha's Buddha field. And that makes a lot of sense to me, resource body. And then also the emanation bodies, Shakyamuni Buddha, and the other appearances of the Buddha are conventional Buddha jewel. Clear enough? Okay. The ultimate Dharma jewel are the last two noble truths, true cessations and true paths. We talked about that. Right? And true paths breaks down a little bit. There also can be broken down into the three higher trainings: ethical conduct, concentration, wisdom. The realization of bodhicitta is also a part of true paths. But the main thing is the actual realizations, primarily, directly, non-conceptually, realization of wisdom, realizing emptiness. That's the ultimate Dharma jewel, the conventional ultimate Dharma refuge. The conventional Dharma jewel and the conventional Dharma refuge are the teachings that the Buddha spoke, the teachings that come down to us as oral transmission, and then of course now they're written down. Then in terms of the sangha, the ultimate sangha are the Aryas who have realized emptiness directly and non-conceptually of any of the three vehicles. Conventional sangha is a group of 4 more fully ordained monastics. Not just one, 4 or more fully ordained. The ultimate sangha are the Arya beings who have realized emptiness directly. And it is the person, not the realization in the mind. That's where I got messed up last week. There is a thing when I look at it from the tantric perspective where it is, where she talks, or His Holiness talks about it being more about the mind, but generally from the Mahayana perspective, it is the person of the Arya. It can be one, it can be a group, it can be ordained, not ordained. The point is that they have realized emptiness directly, and that realization, the cessation, they have cessations is in their mind stream. Okay. The conventional representation, 4 or more fully ordained monastics as a community. So what that means, I mean, it requires 4 fully ordained monastics to be able to do the prescribed procedures that the Buddha required, asked of the Sangha in order to be a fully functioning Sangha. So we happen to have that here. We have our 4 or more, and more than that, fully ordained monastics, so that we can do the full pasada twice a month, our confession and restoration of precepts. We do the Varsa, which we're in now, the monastic 3-month retreat, and then the Pravarana at the end of that retreat, where we give feedback and ask for feedback. Actually, ask for feedback, so that we can be guided. So that we can be guided. So that's the conventional Sangha. So the Sangha is a big merit field, actually. And I think that's what I was trying to talk about at the beginning when we look at the things to purify in regard to the Sangha, is to recognize that the Sangha, the conventional Sangha of 4 or more fully ordained monastics creates a community that is a merit field. And so that also, I think, for the Sangha members, this is more related to the Vinaya class, but for the Sangha members, it takes to hold that as a responsibility in ourselves, keeps us aware of our practice. What are we doing here? And it's kind of inspiring. It can also be a weight. Don't let it be that. Can get into our unworthiness and blah, 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 which is not very useful. But it is the whole community. It's not any one member of the Sangha. Not even one fully ordained member requires 4. Okay, so that's that. And the reason, I mean, for me, this is just me speaking, that the more I've been working with this material, the more I understand the ultimate jewel is the fruit, is the outcome. And the conventional 3 jewels are the level we're at now that we can relate to now. They're like a cause. The conventional 3 jewels is how we access the ultimate of each of those 3 levels. As I said, this is just me, it's not from a book. But how else do we know Dharmakaya except through the appearance of the emanation body of the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha? We don't. How else do we know the ultimate Dharma jewel? How else do we know these kinds of these realizations without the teachings, the conventional Dharma? We don't. And as far as the Sangha is concerned, okay, that might be a stretch. But if we have the inspiration of what the Buddha gave us, oh my gosh, the more you study the Vinaya, you see that what the Buddha did in trying to give the capacity for beings to become Aryas is right there in the Vinaya. He built it there. The teachings are there, not just in the precepts, but in the all the different other aspects of it as well. It's there. On that basis, you can see from the Buddha's time, there were well-known Aryas, well-known Arhats. We don't know about them today so much, but the foundation for that is still built within the Vinaya itself. So that's what I'm thinking. Foundational. So thinking about the ultimate and the conventional really makes a difference when we come to Namo Guru Bhya. Following in the Buddha's footsteps, page 35. The Guru is not a 4th object of refuge, which is often a question. How come the Tibetans have 4 refuges? The Guru is not a 4th object of refuge. Rather, the ultimate Guru is the 4 Buddha bodies, with emphasis being on the omniscient mind of bliss and emptiness. It is important to understand this properly in order to avoid confusion. So the ultimate Guru is the Dharmakaya. Volume 4, page 35. Volume 4, page 35. The ultimate Guru encapsulates all 3 refuges. The ultimate Guru's body is the Sangha. The ultimate Guru's speech is the Dharma. The ultimate Guru's mind is the Buddha's. That's also worth meditating on. The ultimate Guru is not a human being. The ultimate Guru is the omniscient minds of all the Buddhas. All the Buddhas. His Holiness says, it is the union of bliss and emptiness that, motivated by great compassion, is able to effortlessly and spontaneously manifest in a variety of forms to benefit sentient beings who are receptive to their influence. The ultimate Guru is our actual object of refuge. So if we think about the ultimate Guru, actually, this statement at the top about being the source of all virtue makes more sense. The ultimate Guru, what he's saying again, is not a human being, but the omniscient minds of all Buddhas. The union of bliss and emptiness that motivated their great compassion to take the forms they take on in order to guide living beings. So there's the Buddha forms that we can recognize. We have Maitreya, we have Manjushri, we have whatever's coming through our teachers. We don't know who's what. We have the deer and the doors that they appear in when they're who knows what they are, right? When we talk about the emanation bodies that can be, a Buddha can appear as anything. It can appear as anything. We don't know what. But this ultimate Guru, as being the omniscient mind of the Buddha, enlightening beings, working for the benefit of beings continually, that's what we take refuge when we're doing Namo Guru Bhya. And the conventional representation of that is our teachers. Yes. If you're going to ask me to explain it, don't count on it.
Just the difference between the ultimate guru and the Buddha. Is the Buddha Shakyamuni Buddha in that case?
No. The Buddha is still all of the Buddhas. But I think that this is just me talking, okay? Because I can't answer that question. But what I do think is the distinction between Buddha as the first object of refuge, and you look at all the Buddha's qualities and how they manifest in the world, and how, what we have been taught, and we developed confidence and faith in them. Then and this is also only in from the tantric tradition, right? Then we're looking at the ultimate guru and how we achieve that, and also through the form of the teacher being the doorway to that. That's what I think. Again, that's just me. Okay, this is not scripture. Conventional gurus are the spiritual masters who bestow the tantric initiations, but also who give teachings, who give instructions, and so forth. We view them as embodiments of the ultimate guru, which helps make our refuge objects appear more immediate and accessible. That's His Holiness. So, Venerable Sangye Kadra was covering how to relate to a spiritual mentor in this next sue, so I'm not going to go into that very much. But it's so relevant to what we're doing here. And this idea of seeing the teacher as a Buddha, we've also covered and discussed. Geshe Sopa, in his commentary on how to rely on a spiritual mentor, in that section of the Lam Rim, he says it in a nice way. So there's the Sutra of Kshitigarbha, which Jai Rinpoche quotes in the Lam Rim Chenmo. Listen to the Dharma with unqualified faith and respect. Do not deride or disparage it. Honor your Dharma teachers. Develop the perception that they are like the Buddha. And then Geshe Sopa says, with single-minded conviction, it's Geshe Sopa. With single-minded conviction, you should regard your spiritual mentor as if the Buddha himself had come to teach you. Now that is not a huge leap. With single-minded conviction, regard your spiritual mentor as if the Buddha himself had come to teach you. Because why? If you don't have the spiritual mentor teaching you, who's gonna? Not your math teacher, not your mother, not your girlfriend. Who can give you this? So there are different ways, they talk about different ways of seeing your teacher as the representative of the Buddha, of an emanation of the Buddha. But whatever of those versions works for our minds, our teachers are the mouthpiece through which the Buddha speaks to us. Our teachers are the mouthpiece through which the Dharma flows to us. So to hold teachers with that kind of regard, not in a weird way, right? I mean, that's what they say. Don't get confused here. We don't want to, get kind of ecstatic about, oh, my teacher does miracles and they're just a Buddha inside. They look ordinary, but they're really a holy being. And if I really need something, they'll come swoop down and save me. We can get caught up in my teacher is the Buddha. And sometimes I see this, I've seen this among disciples, you can get a little bit of a competition about whose teacher is more holy. And who was telling us this story about in Tibet, in Tibetan culture? Disciples will go in and, that they are, how high they sit depends on how high they are. Right? How high is the tulku, how many generations of, and it's a system I don't understand, but they say the disciples will often come in and slide a little cushion under the setup to make their guru higher, right? So that they make them look better, right? So, it's easy to get into that kind of escalating mind if we let ourselves go to, oh, my teacher is a Buddha. Oh, my teacher is this and oh, my that. So it's not inviting us to go there. But what it is inviting us to do is to, the more we recognize what we have stumbled upon, really stumbled upon through some karma from somewhere, what the Buddha taught is so radical and it is so huge and vast that to have confidence in the Buddha, to then have confidence in the Dharma, to have confidence in the Sangha that's carried it forward, that Dharma forward, then what's coming out of the mouths of our teachers, I mean, nectar is not even the slightest bit descriptive for what kind of potion we can swallow if we take the medicine, that will take us to the Buddha's supreme state. Someday. So honoring your Dharma teachers with the perception that they are like the Buddha actually makes very practical sense. And again, I think we already addressed this, but the question that came up about the root guru defined by Alex Berzin is the person who turns our heart and mind most ardently to the Buddhist path. It's a lovely way of saying it, isn't it? It's the person on whom you rely as the root of the path. If we're relying on a person as the root of the path, or a number of persons, we can have many teachers, and we can have many root gurus, several root gurus anyway. Relying on those people as the root of the path, then having respect, appreciation, and gratitude for all teachers makes the best possible sense. So, why does Venerable suggest that we do this last? Because it's confusing and it's hard to do. It's hard to do because we are so, I'll speak for myself, so dense that you don't really get what the Dharma is for a long time. Maybe in this whole life, maybe not at all. We don't really get how huge and profound it is, except in some moments of great insight. And then what? We get up, we go have a burger, our teacher says something that irritates us, and we've forgotten it all over again. Right? So, I mean, we are so ignorant. It's just mind-boggling. I am. But the more we do this practice, meditate on the Buddha's qualities, look at what the Buddha is, what the Buddha has to offer, what the Buddha did to become Buddha, how the Buddha could teach what the Buddha did to become Buddha so we can become Buddha too. The more deeply we take that into ourselves, then our respect for the teacher is also going to grow, really, really, really grow. And we won't be doing it in a weird way. We'll actually have it with some clarity and groundedness about what we're actually respecting them for. I mean, if you think about it, I don't know about you. If I think about it, how do I know anything about the Dharma? Well, on the basis of teachers. How do I know how to practice anything? On the basis of pretty much one teacher. How is my life transformed? And then for monastics in particular, how am I able to live in the Dharma? And how am I able to be supported in the Dharma? It isn't this one. How do I live day to day in the Dharma? It's on the basis of relying on a teacher. So the teacher helps us by teaching us, showing us how to practice, and their job is also to point out our faults. Oh gosh, what's that Geshe's name from Deer Park? Not Geshe Sopa, but the one who Geshe Tenzin. Oh, his name will come to me. Anyway, I was listening to a teaching to him. It was one of the first things he did when he started coming to Deer Park. He led this pilgrimage to India Venerable Simke and I took with the Deer Park crowd, and he gave a teaching. It must have been. Oh, it was very, very cold. Oh yeah, it was at Sravasti. Gave a teaching very, very cold in the Korean temple. And one of the first things he did when he sat down was the teacher's job is to point out your faults. And I thought, well, that's an interesting introduction for a new Geshe to be able to. Oh, he's wonderful. I don't know why I can't remember his name right now, but for me it was like, whoa, that's their whole job. And I have to think about that. Who in the world has the guts to tell you your faults? That is a kindness, and it is hard to bear, but it is a tremendous kindness because of that great compassion that the Buddha had to get himself to awakening. They're cultivating that great compassion, and they have taken on disciples with that wish. If we have a qualified mentor, taking on disciples with that wish to also be able to transform our minds. That's their purpose. So relying on the teacher in thought and in action, as Tsongkhapa's outline, is what he says to do. So when we're doing, so here's how we do this. Here's how we do this with the practice. So in our Refuge Nujrit practice, we take that refuge as the ultimate guru, the omniscient mind of all the Buddhas that embodies the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So when we're saying Namo Guruvya, Namo Guruvya, Namo Guruvya, first you focus on the Buddha, it's the central figure, and think that that Buddha is the embodiment of all your teachers, which we do in the visualization too. My teacher is appearing, or teachers appearing in the form of the Buddha. So now, again, we're seeing the Buddha here is the embodiment of all of our teachers. Then also the four groups sitting around the Buddha. The lighted nectar is coming from Maitreya, the vast lineage, from Manjushri, lineage of the profound, from Vajradhara behind, the blessings of the practice, and also from the group of teachers in the front. That light is coming. Now, we had this question too about how the teachers appear. They do appear, I talked to Venerable Sangye Kadra about this, they do appear in their ordinary form, but without blemish. She says she thinks of them as very young, in their prime, right? Very beautiful and in their prime. So ordinary form, but idealized somewhat. Right? And so then as we're doing Namo Guruvya, Namo Guruvya, Namo Guruvya, the white light purifies. And then at whatever turning point you turn, the golden light comes in, bringing the realizations. So what are we purifying? All negative karma, especially negative karma you have created in relationship to your spiritual mentors. This is also not an exhaustive list. Disregarding their instructions and their advice. We purify that. Endangering their lives. Hopefully we haven't done that, but I don't know. Drive them off a cliff, I suppose. Anyway, the food they eat. Good point. Forest work. Yeah, being careless with the forest work, right? Endangering their lives. That's a good point. Yeah, what are some other ways we endanger our lives? Maybe we should talk about these. Disregarding their instructions or advice. Let's go back. Anybody not done that? No. Disregarding their instructions or advice. So even right there, why is that a negativity? Yeah, they're trying to help us. We're doing the opposite. We're creating a habit. That is really true, Jason. We're creating a habit. Yeah, one more.
With all the wonderful teachings and advice that I've heard the past 4 or 5 years from Venerable Children, I think, wow, I don't have the capacity yet to actually do it all. So how to just kind of navigate that? Should I be purifying? Like, okay, I can't do it all yet, but I want to be able to.
Yeah. I think, we all have been showered with more advanced teachings than we can swallow, probably. Showered. Yeah, bathed in. So it's not that so much, but if we've been given specific direction, or we've been given, in specific instruction about do this, do this, do this, or even, even mundane tasks. Will you bring me the paper clips? Oop, forgot. Will you walk my cat? Oop, forgot. Even those really simple things of not serving the teacher fully, those are the kinds of things that we really purify. And then directly, if the teacher says, go study X and X and X, and we go, but we go do something else, that's directly not following the directions of the teacher, things like that. Is that more, you get what I mean? Yeah. And then, we can also purify not studying the teachings we've been given also. It's also creating a habit. Disturbing their minds. Purify disturbing their minds. When she taught this, she said, you all can think about that. Oh, right. Disturbing the teacher's minds. Criticizing them. To their face, behind their back. Misappropriating their belongings. Oh boy, once very early in my time here, someone sent a box of chocolate chip cookies to Venerable. And I didn't intend to give them to everybody, but I opened the box, and then they suddenly came out for the whole community, right? Helping hands. Oh, chocolate chip cookies. Look. Oh man, I don't know if I've specifically purified that, but boy, that was a wrong thing to do. That was a gift. That was an offering to the teacher. That was not an offering to the sangha. And just even messing with it, it got into the hands of all of our helping hands and everybody getting excited about chocolate chip cookies. It was gone. Don't do that. Getting angry at our teachers. We purify that. And then speaking harshly to them, we purify that. In short, we purify all the negativities that we've created with our spiritual mentors. So if we get angry at them and we're criticizing them, then, we're the ones making it difficult for ourselves. We're the ones that are setting up obstacles to hear the Buddha's words. We are. And so, again, I think, this is again speaking personally, it is difficult to stay kind of clean and clear about getting caught up in the personality of the teacher. And how we want to please them. That's a worldly wish. Oh, how we want recognition. That is 8 worldly concerns. Oh, how we want them to like us. 8 worldly concerns. This has nothing to do, actually, with their capacity to share the Dharma and our capacity to receive it. Except that our craving something that may or may not come. Actually, if your teacher's good, it won't come. And I can tell you, praise, if you're addicted to praise, forget it. Forget it. And what is that? It's nothing but a worldly concern. That training is to get over that worldly concern so that the flow of Dharma is actually wide open. And then, there's a great deal of, I really, really recommend people reading this section on Nalamrim Chenmo on how to rely on a spiritual mentor, just straight from Jay Rinpoche. It is so beautiful. It is so clear. He has so many wonderful quotations about it. But in the outline, there's, how to have faith in the teacher, how to cultivate faith, and then how to cultivate respect. Those are the two qualities that we need to do. And in cultivating faith and in cultivating respect, we think of their good qualities. We think of their good qualities, and then we think of their kindness. Their kindness in teaching, and then all the other ways that our teachers have been kind to us. And there are many. They're uncountable if you actually start listing them out. And this mind of ours that wants to criticize and find fault, every single guidance everywhere says simply, stop it. There are ways to do it. I mean, Jay Rinpoche gives us some, Alex Berson's book gives us some, but it's that critical mind that chops off, again, our capacity to be able to receive the pure Dharma coming straight from Buddha Dharma Sangha out our teachers' mouths and the way they live. We also learn from how they live, how they are in the world. And if we're too busy caught up on whether their political views match ours or not, or that they even talk about politics or not, then that's all we see. We miss the Dharma. Right? We're getting totally critical about that. If we wonder why the heck this person is now running all over Asia with an armload of stuffed animals. Some people are delighted by that. Some people are horrified by that. Either way, what does that have to do with the Dharma? If we are constantly thinking about the good qualities of the teacher, then the things that we question or doubt are just kind of irrelevant. But if we're constantly looking at the faults or the things we don't agree with and thinking that something we don't agree with is a fault, then we're starting to build up barriers and walls and connections with our teacher. And, I'll tell you, I have seen this. I have seen this more times really now after all these years than it's been quite sad to see how not respecting the teacher can become into criticizing the teacher, can become to doing one thing that really ticks you off and I'm out of here. And I've seen so many people come to that moment when it's really coming from their own side. And that's true. I mean, I can see it in them. I don't see it in myself as well. But that's the danger. It's not that the teacher needs any of us to love and appreciate and praise. If they do, then that's their problem, and that's none of our business actually. But a qualified teacher is not looking for that. But when we do the criticism and when we cut them off, we are cutting ourselves off, and nobody's doing that but us. Nobody. When we question our teacher's motivation, and so we have a lot, I don't know about you, a lot to purify when it comes to the teacher. And that is because of our ordinary minds. So it's not to feel terrible. I mean, sometimes you look at some of the things I've done and said and I feel terrible, but that's not useful. What's useful is to transform that way of thinking, that way of being, and recognize, oh, the teacher's still there. Whoa, I have been such a jerk. Teacher's still there. Wow. That's something right there. That says something right there. And to hold that this is the fountain out of which the Dharma is pouring day and night unceasingly. I don't think I realized until recently what it takes for someone to teach 3 times a week and then run a course on the weekend and then do a 10-day course here and then, like, what? It's insane. Yeah. It is out of compassion. I wish to share the Dharma. So using this, not to get totally caught up in the personality of our present teacher or the teachers we've had, but to use this practice of purifying the ultimate guru, everything that we've done, not just this life, previous lives, when we see other disciples doing things, we think, well, I'd never do that. Well, think twice for one thing, but then use that also as purification. In the past, have I done this? Have I done this in previous lives? Right, over and over and over and over again. Then the good qualities of all of our gurus, the things we admire in them, the qualities of the Buddhas, we imagine all of this flows into us too. So it's not just a purification practice. We're also, generating this mind of accepting this beautiful flow of golden light that brings their realizations into us. Mama Tsongkhapa has this, he quotes Atisha here. So Geshe Drontopa is the leading disciple of Lama Atisha, who was the purported author, laid out the Lamrim for the Tibetans. Geshe Drontopa said, in Tibet, there are many who are meditating and practicing, yet they are not attaining any special good qualities. And the elder Atisha said, all the significant and insignificant good qualities that pertain to the Mahayana arise from relying on a guru. You Tibetans only think of gurus as being common persons. How can good qualities arise? Oh. Thus, faith is very important. So faith in the teacher, in this case, faith of, there are different types, faith in the three jewels, but here is faith in the teacher, faith in the teachers. So, Venerable Sangha will cover how to rely on the teacher in thought, how to rely on the teacher with actions, generally and very generally, thinking of their good qualities, allowing that to let our respect arise, our gratitude arise, thinking of their kindness, and by practicing in actions, making offerings to them, showing respect and offering service, and principally practicing the teachings that they give us. Practicing. So that's refuge in the Guru. Namo Guru Bhya. Again, among the many, many beautiful things, I wanted to share this one. Oops, page 83. This 10 Teaching Sutra. Develop for the following ideas with respect to your teachers. I have wandered for a long time through cyclic existence, and they search for me. I have been asleep, having been obscured by delusion for a long time, and they wake me. They pull me out of the depths of the ocean of existence. I have entered a bad path, and they reveal the good path to me. They release me from being bound in the prison of existence. I have been worn out by illness for a long time, and they are my doctors. They are the rain clouds that put out my blazing fire of attachment and the like. So in this way, we think about our teachers, the ones we have here, of course, His Holiness, the ones we have everywhere. The examples we have of our teachers in this world, which is also amazing. Think about Geshe Topke. all that he has offered. I mean, the wealth, the richness in which we live, it's so evident sometimes. I think it's easy to not see. Easy to not see. And that is a fault to purify. That is a fault to purify too, that we take these things for granted because, as we know from our own experience, he's here today, he's gone tomorrow. We don't know where. Yeah.
How do you bridge the gap or relate when you were doing the reflection of the ultimate guru and the conventional guru? Because at least in my mind, yeah, I mean, especially like all the things to purify, they're very much related to the teachers that we have physical contact with. And there's so much there to think about that I can forget or lose the concept of the ultimate guru.
Yeah.
And I'm much more focused on my in-person teachers here. So how do you bring yourself back to the ultimate guru? Or
Yeah. Yeah. So this is also just me talking. I don't know about, but I mean, this is why Venerable said, do this last, because it's hard. It's really hard. And we still get caught up in the personalities of the person in front of us because our realization, I mean, our experience of this life is like so vivid. It seems so real. But in this practice, even if you have the way that the visualization is set out, the light's coming from all of them, including your teachers in the front. And so somehow for me, the visualization of having the all of that light kind of coming through the central figure of the present day teachers helps. That, I mean, to me, that for me personally, that they are the funnel. They are the only access I have to Ultimate Guru. Ultimate Guru can't touch my mind. It's too thick. But that teacher can, and that teacher can, and that teacher can. So it's like holding it in that way. The other thing for me too, personally, again, I think I said this to somebody the other day, whenever I'm visualizing that part of the refuge field, Venerable Thubten and His Holiness and Tsongkhapa are like fused in my mind. And then that Tsongkhapa is the link to the both profound and the extensive view. That is a very clear line of pipes and plumbing, right? It comes out like that. But that's a personal, that's not a description anybody should do, but that's a personal way it appears in my mind. Okay, so the question that we didn't get to for discussion is, what are some of the usually worldly motivations you have for cultivating a relationship with your teacher? And then how do you personally transform and work with these? These are directly from guided meditations. What does it mean to please our teachers? Huh. That's a good question. Yeah. What are some of the worldly motivations you have for cultivating your relationship with your teachers? You know, things like, if they like me, then I'm a better person. It proves to myself that I'm okay. Things like that. How do you personally transform? No. Yes. How do you personally transform these into Dharma motivations? So how do you take your own, I mean, this is just a practice. How could you take your own craving for love, the parent I never had, whatever it is that we bring? How do you transform that into a Dharma motivation? What do you need to do with your own thinking to change that into a Dharma motivation? Yeah, it's a good exercise. And then what does it mean to, quote, please our teachers? Okay. Okay. It's very precious. All right. Let's dedicate. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.